Kickstarter has been a popular way for games to get their new start, so much so now that it's almost considered a marketplace for even some of the biggest companies. However, that wasn't always the case. Some games sort of just hopped on the scene, and Alien Frontiers was one of them. First released back in 2010. That feels very old for me. Time has been flying by too fast. But anyways, this is a dice worker placement game, and it was beloved when it came out. So much so there have been tons of different expansions, promo cards, all the works that have come out since then. And this new edition is going to capture them all up in Alien Frontiers Edition X. This should include everything that you've ever wanted in your copy of Alien Frontiers. So let's see how this game now stands the test of time. This is the classic setup for this game without any of the expansions thrown in. I'm going to quickly go over what the base rules have to offer before we see what happens when you throw in any of the other modular expansions. Now, this is a dice worker placement game where you'll be rolling dice and placing them throughout different sectors of the board, slowly trying to terraform this planet by placing down colonies, and whoever can place all their colonies down first ends the game and hopefully has the most victory points. Now, on the start of your turn, you will take any dice that are on the board and roll them. Now, depending on the values, as this is a dice worker placement game, there are many different spots for you to place your workers, as well as different conditions. Some spots, like the lunar mine, require you to simply place a value of equal or greater than the highest value there. So all these dice are available, but a 1 can no longer be placed there as there's now 2s. Now, you're going to have to do whatever is best for you on your turn, but there are all kinds of different spots. There are places like the solar converter and the lunar mine or orbital market, place for you to get resources to pay the cost of other spots. The shipyard actually lets you build more dice, aka ships, that will allow you to roll more dice on your next turn. Then there's the alien artifacts. They allow you to gain these very strong cards, which you can use for once per turn effects or discard them for a one-time powerful bonus. And finally, there's the terraforming station, colonist hub, and colony constructor. These are sort of the where you need to go to win spots, as the point of the game is to build these colonies on the planet. Regardless of which spot you go to, you'll slowly be able to build these up, and if you have the most in an area, you will actually gain this tile. This tile has a strong power, which you can take advantage of, which, by the way, this center one gives you an extra die, but that is not the die included in the game. Mine apparently has decided that the relic ship, is what it's called, has decided to be a relic and be hidden. So for now, know that there's a much prettier die. Each colony you have placed is going to give you a victory point. And each tile you have in addition to that is going to give you more victory points, 1 for each one. However, colonies, which can never be removed from the board, if someone were to contest you there and you no longer have the most, you're going to have to put the tile back and therefore lose the point that it would offer you. The game will keep going with people placing their dice as well as their colonies until one player has successfully placed all of their colonies. As soon as that happens, the game immediately ends, and whoever has the most victory points is the winner. So let's say you're looking to add some more to your game after playing enough of the classic version. The first thing to point out are alien tech cards. The base game, you only use 22 tech cards. There are plenty more included in the box. Over 70 include the other 22. So there are tons of cards to spice up your game and change the strategies people have to offer. Now let's actually get to the big named modules. The first one is factions. During game setup, everyone's going to end up with one of these faction tiles. They're going to add 2 new things to the game. First off, they add a new location for people to place their die. The only requirement, usually, is that they must pay a fuel to whoever is the owner of that faction. If that is you, you don't need to pay that cost. The other thing they add is a unique power specifically just for that player. Each faction also comes with a reference card, by the way, that explains the power specifically for its owner, as well as for the location for people to share. Next are agendas. These will be cards that will be dealt out in the beginning of the game, as well as ones that you can earn if you visit the orbital market. These will be kept hidden and have 2 objectives on them. You can either complete the in-game objective, which if you do, reveal right away to get a victory point, or the end-game objective, which you keep hidden until the very end of the game, in which case if you have the conditions there, you will gain a victory point. You can only ever score up to 3 of these, be it through in-game or end-game ones. So it's a great way to add a bit more tension and uncertainty when it comes to whether or not you will actually win the game if you end it. Finally, there's the outer belt, which adds a whole new row of cards, as well as a new location for you to place your colony. Now, this acts exactly like the planet. If you were to put a colony there, you can capture that ability. The cards, on the other hand, are a little bit different in how you claim them. Unlike the alien artifacts, where you simply need to reach a specific total at the alien artifact spot, each spot is unique in how you capture. It can change what the card needs. For example, this system pilot has a 4 and the special symbol for the row it's in. So currently the special symbol can be a 5 or a 6. However, if the system pilot was higher up in the line, like here, it could be a 2, 3, or 4. At the start of each turn, though, you're going to roll this asteroid die. If you hit the asteroid symbol, all cards are going to move down. So if they are here, they're actually going to exit as these slide down, and a new card will appear. If by any chance someone purchases a card, that space would still stay if the symbol is rolled, and you add more cards like so. There are blanks, so it isn't a guarantee that those cards will rotate. The other big thing about the asteroid cards is this symbol in the top corner. Some of them have that symbol with a red X, but most of them do not. When you purchase a card, you actually are towing it back, so you actually have to put it sideways, and not until the start of your next turn can you actually use them and activate them. So there is a lot to cover here, as this is not just a base game, but a base game plus all its expansions. So let's quickly go over the base rules for those who didn't play this game back in 2010. Obviously, worker placement using dice. Mostly my preferred way of worker placement. I like it when the workers do a bit more. There's a bit more strategy there because you don't just have 3 spots, 3 workers, they go there. It's, oh, I have this kind of worker who can only go in these spots and these spots. And dice are, or at least have been, a very easy way to add this kind of complexity, as you have numbers. And it's very easy to say only numbers of this value or up can go here, or you need a certain total. And this game does it. Unfortunately, I will say, and not to be mean, but it is definitely shows its age. And I say that because I've played plenty of other worker placement games that I think have done many things this does, but like sharpened up, tightened a bit more, tweaked a little bit. So it's not like it's not saying that this does it poorly, but it's definitely shows that it was one of the earlier ones to use this mechanic. 2 of the major factors are, 1, that pretty much when it's not your turn, there's not much to do. You can walk away, come back with a drink, and there really isn't anything for you to do about it. The other big issue, and this one is the one that I think bothered me the most when it came to the base rules, is it felt like after the first game, there wasn't like, oh, I'm taking the tech strategy to build up this whole tech supply and get points that way. It was who can get the most colonies there first. Yes, there are getting more points if you control the areas versus whether you just have put your little colonies where other people are. But almost, I think every game that involved base rules, pretty much if you dropped your last colony, well, 1, if you're ending the game, you know you've won. But also just usually the person who was putting the last one seemed to already have a stranglehold almost on being able to shoot out the colonies as quickly as possible, whether it be through the terraforming or just placing a lot of their dice into the ore producing area, locking the area down until it comes back around to their turn, things of that nature. But luckily, that's where all the expansions come in. So there are a ton of different expansions for this game. And from what I can tell, I looked on Board Game Geek because I was curious. There are a bunch of promos and mini expansions, and I think they cover most of them here. I've got a picture of some of the ones that I found that were listed separately from just being part of the factions or the agendas or any of the other expansions. So I don't have an official list, but I think it's safe to say that this box does have it all. Now, in terms of it, really you can sort them into technically 3 expansions, but we're going to go with a small 4th one. That 4th one just being tech cards. They tell you how to set up a classic game, which is what we were talking about before, but they have a bunch of tech cards that aren't specific for one of the previously mentioned expansions. I think they're just an assortment of ones that have been added over the years, and that can change the deck from the 22, I think it was 22 you start off with, to over 70. So you can really change up what cards come out, what you can expect. Maybe the decoys or the ones that stop stealing never come out, or they're at the bottom of the deck. It really changes up the availability and really makes it almost like drinking from the fire hose a little bit, which has its own pros and cons. As like I said, You can't reliably find those specific cards. Now, those could be added pretty much just for your own base game, like just do the classic with more tech. But really, you're going to want to throw in at least one of the other expansions as well. The 3 expansions are as follows. The first one is factions, pretty much asymmetrical powers for people. These will give a special power just for the person, but also a new location for you to land your die, which is definitely appreciative because once you start getting to the second half of the game, I could say, or at least when more people are getting lots of dice, sometimes there aren't as many good spots for you to place your dice just because people have crowded them out. So having those extra little areas that can do some more fun little manipulations are definitely appreciative. And then there is the agendas. This one probably was the one that was made for me about how the game ends. Usually, like I said, race to the finish. First one to get all their things down probably wins. Agendas add hidden cards. You can have up to 3 hidden or revealed. The revealed ones are already used because they have 2 halves. One can be revealed during the game for a victory point. The other one can be revealed at the end of the game for a victory point. So you have to decide whether you want that early game point or the end game. There are good strategies for why you'd want both, for bluffing reasons, for just getting ahead reasons. But the main thing is that when that person thinks they can finish the game because they're in the lead, well, if they don't have any completed agendas, but they see someone else has 3 face down cards, those 3 cards could push them over. Final one is the outer belt. This adds a whole new board on the side, which I really enjoy because the art connects, and a new deck. This was actually really nice as well because similar to the factions, it gives a new spot for you to place dice. But there's a whole new interesting strategy as certain dice can only work in certain places. The first one, if they need a unique 1 or 2, sometimes it might need 3, 4, or 5. So on and so forth. So sometimes you need to wait for a card to hit a certain area if you need certain dice values. And then, of course, other people could have dice that block you, even if they're taking another card. And more importantly, at least in the games that we played, in those moments when it was a little bit harder to come across ore because the spots are filled, there was probably an asteroid that you could pick up instead that you could discard later with some fuel to gain some ore. So when it came to my play group, I think for the most part, people are pretty happy. During our base game expansion, yes, we had fun, but then we're like, even the first playthrough, we're like, I think I know what I'm supposed to do. And then everyone just did it. So it sort of lost a bit of its luster pretty quickly. But with expansions, that definitely help keep things complicated and competitive. I will say that still 2 problems exist when you consider all the expansions. First, I did try this foolishly with someone after playing through the expansions and they hadn't played it all yet. And I'm like, oh yeah, I'll tell you how it works. It'll be fine. And they felt a little overloaded. So you're probably, unfortunately, going to have to go back to the base rules, maybe play a few rounds of that before you go and just throw them into the deep end. That could just be a me problem, but something to keep an eye out for. The other thing is, with expansions and more complexity, and sort of related to the last thing I said, comes more, lack of a better term, analysis paralysis. You're going to have longer turns in between where people are trying to think of what they can do. There's more options they have at the table. And in a game like this that really you're not rolling your dice until it's your turn. For good reason that you're holding spots and stuff, but you're not having cards that interact or trigger during opponents' turns. You frankly could take out your phone. You could spend some time browsing Reddit. It's definitely something where you might want to have a timer for just to make sure you can finish this game in a good sitting. But that is going to definitely be more playgroup specific. Unfortunately, my playgroup and myself, I'm part of it. We do tend to stretch games out far beyond the time that is set on the box. So these are things you're going to have to consider, but regardless, this is a game in this new big box. It has decided to collect everything up in a way that so you can still introduce this to newer players, while at the same time, when it does get a little bit predictable, you can throw in some expansions, extra cards, whatever you need to spice your game up. Crits and misses for Alien Frontier Expansion X. Crits. The worker placement here is enjoyable. There are plenty of spots for you to use. And of course, because it's using dice workers, they're not all simply the same thing. This adds a bit more strategy in how you do decide to place your workers, making you feel a bit more rewarded, not only for how you place them, but also when you get some more workers, giving you more numbers and options, so to speak, when it comes to trying to fit that perfect optimal strategy. While I did feel there's a predictableness in the classic mode of this game, with all the expansions included in this edition, it's very easy for you to add new components that will help deal with some of the problems or add some more complexity to your game. Whether that's secret cards in the form of agendas, new locations in the form of both the factions and the outer belt, or simply some of the asteroid cards to give you just more ways to get more powers and resources, there's plenty this game has to offer to fit whatever you need for your next playthrough. I really feel a lot of work was put in to make sure this game was as legible and good to look at as possible, whether it's the components, in particular obviously the colonies and their cute little bubbles, or even the reference cards, which there are a ton of for the base and expansions, or the rulebook, which I think is laid out really well. It was obvious this game was designed to prevent as much confusion as possible when it came around to your turn. Misses. Mostly in the base rules, it doesn't feel like there is any kind of exploration of different strategies. Rather, it just seems to be try to drop as many colonies as quickly as possible. Yes, you can try to fight over some of those tiles for extra points, but really, odds are if you can throw more than your opponents on the board, you're going to end the game before they do and therefore have the most points at the end. Whether you play with the expansions or not, I do feel that the turns can take a little bit long in the later half of the game. Analysis paralysis can easily take hold on players as they try to find out the most optimal strategy for their dice. So depending on your play group, you may want to have a timer or something to make sure this game doesn't last the entire night. I can see why this game was considered so great back when it came out. There is a lot great going for it, but definitely now with the expansions would be the only way I'd really want to play this. No offense to the base game, but I really enjoy what the expansions have to offer. I think they add some fun complexities there and also make that ending a bit more exciting. What's really nice here is a few things. One, like I said, I went on Board Game Geek to see what expansions exist, and the fact that there's all the promos and they seem to be included in here would make it a lot easier for me for starting new to just be able to buy one box that has it all. Second, because it includes how to play the classic and then throw in expansions, it's a great way for you to sort of teach the game almost like I don't want to say tutorial, but a much more simpler, understandable version before you throw them into the outer belt and just like, go get some rocks. Anyways, it does a lot really well here, whether it's for someone newer because it has a lot of great steps and great ways for you to modify, modular, throw in expansions. While at the same time, I'm sure those of you who enjoyed this in the past, this new updated version will include all the little bits and pieces and maybe a few of the expansions that you were missing out on. Let me know if you were a fan and you backed the original Alien Frontiers, or if you're new and this is the time that you're going to jump into this game. I'd love to hear your thoughts on all this, what strategies you have, and if you have certain expansions that you consider musts or certain cards that you always remove from your game, let me know in the comments down below. But for now, thank you so much. If you left a comment, of course, the like, share, subscribe. That's always really nice. They always help out in the frontier that is YouTube. And of course, to everyone on Patreon, all my rollers, thank you so much and help me slowly but steadily increase my score. But for now, I'm Will, and this has been a Roll for Crit review.